Welcome back. This is Nagarajan. I hope you had already watched the part 1 session. If not, please watch it and come back to this session. Let's continue with the part 2 principles today. I'll walk you through the best practices one by one. Let's get started right away. While we automating the scenarios, we should not focus only on completing the test scripts on time. We must need to think other aspects as well. I mean the security aspects. If you are keeping the sensitive information like username, password, secret key on the property file, there may be a chance for security violation. Those informations are confidential information which needs to be placed inside Jenkins. We can create a global credentials and place a username and password over there. These credentials can be placed inside a Jenkins pipeline script. So through environment variables, credentials can be easily accessed inside an automation framework. One last thing, in your project, if you had already confirmed that the username and password are not that confidential, then it is fine to place the information on the property file. Okay, let's move on. TestNG has provided various options. We must need to understand the importance of it and use them wherever applicable. That note, priority is one of the important attributes that defines the order in which the test cases need to be executed. Verified display text takes the first priority and verified partial page URL takes the second priority. So this gets executed first and then with the second one. Let's move on. Likewise, we must need to use depends on methods as well. In a test suite, there could be n number of test cases. At times, we must need to run only the test when another test has run. For an instance, I want verify login test to run only if this particular test has run. So in this case, one test is dependent with the another test. These are called as dependent test. Let's move on. Grouping is the very good concept in TestNG. We can club the test cases and group them as smoke test or regression test. By this way, we can trigger the smoke test cases or regression test cases as per our need. The main challenge is at the initial stage itself, we must need to identify the test cases. I know that it's not practically possible to figure out, but it's better if you are able to group them correctly. Let's move on. Invocation count is one of the good features available in TestNG. If we need to run the same test multiple times, we can use invocation count. Inside the trigger add to cart test, we are trying to click the add to cart 3 times using invocation count equal to 3. Without using any for loop or while loop, we are doing this. So looping is not at all required if invocation count is in place. That's it. Let's move on. While implementing the page object model, always try to create a separate class to hold the web elements of a page. Home page element should contain home page elements. Login page should contain login page elements. Avoid placing the different page elements in a single class. I've seen this many times. People usually say this class is a common object repository class and this class can hold different elements of a page. But that is not at all correct and it is not a right approach. So for each page, we should have each class. That's it. Let's move on. We should not be in a hurry to get the locators. Using the right locators help to avoid no such element exception. For text box, text area, drop down, checkbox fields and all, the first preference would be using ID, name and class name. And the next preferences are CSS selector, XPath. Likewise, for links as well, avoid performing the assertions using text method or contains method. We must not rely on partial way of verification or even the actions on the page. So please make a note of this. Let's move on. Always try to use Page Factory. It is a class provided by Selenium WebDriver which helps to implement the page object model. Using @find by annotation, we can locate the web elements of a page. Init elements method is used to initialize the web elements of a page. Let's move on. Always create the test data before we proceed with the execution. It's not only for automation, it is also applicable for manual testing as well. At times, we will need to check with developers or else with other teams for creating the quality test data. So get them ready with the data and then proceed with the execution. Test data always plays a vital role in automation. If there is no valid test data, there will be no valid test results. So please keep this in mind. Avoid placing the thread.sleep inside the test. By this way, we are explicitly making the system to wait for certain time. That's really a bad approach. Always use explicit wait in place of thread.sleep. But frankly speaking, there are some scenarios which would force us to use thread.sleep. That I agree. If there is no other way, then in an exceptional case, we can look out for thread.sleep. That's fine. Just make sure to remove all the unused imports, packages, classes and methods. Sometimes we may even forget to notice the unwanted spaces and incorrect spelling mistakes. Look at here, we are having unwanted spaces, spelling mistakes, sysouts, system.println. All these need to be corrected. Another one, outcoding the test data is a bad practice. Try to fetch the data from external files. It could be either from Excel file or JSON file or property file. That would be the ideal approach. Better to use JSON files instead of Excel files. At times, there may be a chance of corruption of data while we use Excel files. In terms of performance, I would say JSON files are the right choice. As and when we progress on creating the test scripts, we always intend to automate the business logic. So we write everything inside that test and we say automation is done. It's not like that. Try to create as many reusable methods and place it inside a utility class. So whenever you need them, you can reuse them across different packages or even in different projects as well. Try to have a separate utility methods for Selenium, Java and Excel Reader. For this, you can refer my previously posted videos, Selenium WebDriver Framework Part 1 to Part 5. Having more parameters in a method is a complicated one. You can either use hash table or an hashmap, something like this. Refer the data dynamically. Two-dimensional object array helps to drive the data to the test. For this one also, I already posted a video. You can refer them. Let's move on. Don't always intend to refresh the page or reload the page. Using driver.get, you can re-invoke the page. I'm sure this would help to load all the web elements properly. There won't be any exceptions as well. That's it. Let's move on. It's a good one. Avoid performing the partial test assertion. Try to place the complete URL and perform the test assertion. By this way, even if there is any change in the URL path, the test assertion will find it correctly. Partial testing always results in partial failures. So please make a note of it. Whenever we perform any test on a web page, it's a good practice to have the browser maximized. That's it. Always trigger the test from testng.xml. Just hold your hand to perform right click to select testng test. Have some clarity before you trigger. Sometimes we pass parameter from testng.xml to trigger the test. So in that case, it leads to fail. So always trigger the execution from testng.xml. That's a good practice. With this, I'm done with the part 2 session. I believe these practices would be really helpful to you. Based on my experience and knowledge, I'm collecting all these data. It's really a painful process for me to come up with the videos with good quality content. Nowadays, I'm not finding time to post more videos. As you all know, I'm a test lead. I do have my own deliverables. Despite that, I'm doing all these videos. So please like and share my video to your friends and teammates. I'll see you guys in the part 3 session. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.